Hi, everybody. My name's Emily. I'm a reporter for Patch in Los Angeles County. I cover a couple areas, and today I'm going to talk about interviewing. So interviewing, if you don't already know this, is one of the most important tools that we have as reporters. It's where you're going to get the meat of information for your story. I'm sure if you read the news at all, you know that like a great anecdote, a great quote, a great interesting person can really make an article, and the absence of it can really break an article. So there's an art to a good interview. It's always kind of a balancing act between preparation and then being really present and easygoing and kind of flowing in the moment. So we'll walk through all the different steps. So first off, deciding who to interview. This initially can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but like there's no wrong answer here. The right answer is just interview everyone, interview anyone, cast a really wide net. Like you want to be talking to people who are experts on the issue, who are going to give you logistical information. You want to be talking to people who are affected by the issue. Like if you're talking about a class at school, you're going to be wanting to talk to a teacher, to students, maybe to people who aren't so thrilled with the class, maybe people who love the class. You want opposing sides. You really want to add some color, and you want to make sure you're getting like a full range of opinions and perspectives. And to find people to interview, you can, first off, my favorite tool is social media. Who's talking about it, even if someone's just posting something on their Instagram story, like DMing them and saying, hey, like it seems like you're interested in this topic, I'd love to interview you. Social media can be a really great way to find people and reach out to them. Also, if there's any documentation that exists on the topic you're covering, go straight to those people. Who's listed on the document? Who's listed as the author of the document? Is there a contact info document? Just anyone that seems available to you, reach out. Some people might not even get back to you. You really should cast a wide net. If you're having a hard time finding people, ask people you already know. Do you have like a trusted teacher who you know is clued in to what's going on campus? Ask them, where should I start? This is what I'm writing on. And once you have your first source, ask them where to go to, like who else has been talking about this, who else is involved. All these different tools can be really helpful. Directories, LinkedIn, Facebook. Never be embarrassed about a cold message or a cold call. Just reach out, tell people what you're doing, and see what they say. Also important to note that interviews aren't always just to get quotes. So when you're deciding who to interview, you're not necessarily just looking for people who are going to give you a good story. You're really looking to build out the information. Like you won't be able to figure everything out without talking to some expert on the issue. So preparing for an interview is also super important. People can tell when you haven't done your research about them and about the topic. And it also just makes it really hard to get any kind of interesting or nuanced information. So if you don't come into an interview prepared, you're not going to have really rich questions that are going to get to kind of the heart of issues or get to some kind of like interesting angles. So first and foremost, you should be researching the person you're going to talk to. You should know how they're related to the issue. Why are you interviewing them? You should know that. You should have a clear answer, because I think they know the details of when this is going to be finished, or because I think they have an interesting perspective on how it's going to affect students. Or you should always know why. And again, like LinkedIn can be a great tool for this. Social media can be a great tool. Getting a background of where they've worked in the past, what they've accomplished at the school, what clubs they're involved in, where they're from. All these kinds of things are good things to know going in. Obviously, you can't know everything, but it should be clear that you've done some of your homework. And then the topic, you should be as much of an expert as you can be without having done interviews. So you should be Googling the topic you're looking into. You should have read all the available documentation. You should have all the appropriate context going in. You're not going to know everything. That's why you're doing an interview, but it should be very clear that you know what you're talking about, that you've done your homework, to build that kind of trusting respect relationship between you and the person you're interviewing. Something I like to do to make sure I'm prepared is to sequence my interviews properly. So start with my more logistical interviews. So say like a project manager or someone who's actually involved in the planning of something or in the execution of something, and then move up from there into people who are going to give you more kind of high level perspectives so that you're not looking for practical information from the wrong people, and so that you have all that context really rich and you've gotten all your kind of logistical questions out of the way before you're dealing with anything higher level or opinion or perspective. Writing questions, this is like one of the most important things. Obviously, I'm going to say everything is the most important thing. It's all important, but this is where the balancing act really is going to come into play. So there will be some practical questions you want to ask, and that's fine, but the vast majority of your questions should not be yes or no questions. They should be open-ended and informed. So you want to be asking people like, walk me through X part of this, or I've heard such and such. Can you elaborate on that? Can you explain that to me? How did that make you feel? What did that go like for you? What's expected to happen? They should be open-ended questions. If they're answering yes or no, it's not a nuanced enough question, and you probably could have known the answer coming in. That being said, there's no stupid questions. So as much as you're going to have researched and as much as you're going to be as much of an expert as you can be, you got to throw your pride a little bit out the window. You're meeting with this person because they know more than you. And so, you know, have no shame. Explain to them that you're trying to be an expert, that you're trying to be informed. And just don't worry about looking stupid. Like, you can't look stupid if that's the mission. You should know why you're interviewing someone, but you'll never know what they're going to tell you. So if you're going in to an interview thinking you know what you're going to get out of it, say, oh, I just want this kind of quote and then I'm out, you got to open up your mind a little bit more than that. You're not going to be asking really rich questions. And then offer framing, but don't be trying to show them that you've done your research. It'll show through if you have done your research, but you do want to offer framing when you're asking your questions. Tell them what you think you know about the subject, and then allow them to kind of either correct you or elaborate. Be sure that you're setting up the interview to get to something richer than you could have already known. And there's some tips down here about some good open-ended questions, prompting like, tell me about, or please elaborate on, these kinds of words that frame a better answer. So when you actually sit down for your interview, don't forget the practical questions. So you can't be too meticulous when you're conducting an interview. Ask for name spelling, age, job title, where they're from, you know, and then follow up any kind of anecdotal story that they're telling you with detail questions. So if they say, I have a long commute to work, how long, from where to where, how many miles, do you take the car? Do you take a bus? Do you take a bike? You want to be getting all these details. If they mention a conversation they have with someone, say, when was that conversation? Who's that person? And do you have contact info for them? You can't be too detailed, and it can be easy to get lost in the conversation, but you always want to be taking yourself back and saying, I need details if this is going to be usable for me in the article. You want to be really present in an interview. So you've done a lot of prep. You want to hold to your questions in a loose way. So you don't want to hold to the questions so much you're missing what the person is saying to you. So you want to be able to take tangents where they come. You want to be able to ask follow-up questions. If they say something you totally weren't expecting, so you don't have questions prepped for that, that's okay. Run with it. Like, you don't want to miss anything that they're telling you because you've prepared and because you want to stay on task. Be flexible. Again, this is a conversation and it should feel as such, but be professional, be gracious. These people are being generous with their time. That's not to say you can't hold them to task politely. So if they're going on tangents, if they're kind of on topics that don't matter, you can gently push back. You know, I would like to revisit what you said earlier, or I'd like to kind of stay on this topic. But again, be really professional. Keep your opinions way away. You're going to have interviews where you really don't agree on a personal level with the person, and it's okay to push back on ideas or push back based on what other sources have told you, but keep your opinions way out the same way you would in an article. Like, you're not there to fight with the person or change their mind. You're there to get their perspective in a controlled way. And then logistically, you should always be taking notes during interviews, regardless of whether or not you're going to record them. Recording is a decision you'll need to make based on the laws in your state. The different states have different laws about whether you need to ask someone explicitly before you record them. But either way, always take notes. And then you should always be really communicative with the person you're interviewing about what you're going to be doing. So setting up and saying, if you're going to record, saying that or asking permission. And then if you're taking notes, telling them, I'm going to be taking notes either by hand or on my laptop. And so you don't just seem distracted. It can make someone really uneasy to like have someone taking notes or recording if they haven't been told exactly where those notes are going or where the recording is going. It's really important to be communicative with them so they feel comfortable as well. Also be present about details in the room. What are they wearing? What kind of room are they in? Are there pictures behind them that are interesting? Ask them about it. Take notes and write those down. Those can be really colorful details in the story that you might not have thought in the moment would mean something, but later may become kind of a key part of your story, that they were wearing a bright pink jacket and that so perfectly describes them. Or, you know, be really present and meticulous. Follow-up, you should never be just finishing an interview and forgetting about it. So always be sure that you have contact information and that you've asked them how you should best contact them. The way you reached out and initially might not be their preferred way to communicate. And if you're on deadline, you definitely want to know that you have some kind of way to reach out to them quickly. And then give them your contact and tell them what your general deadline is so that they can always reach back out to you if they forgot something or wish they had said something differently or are somehow nervous now about something they said. Don't be afraid to go back to your sources if something else comes up. If you find something out that contradicts something they said, go back to them, check it back with them, say, hey, actually someone said that this project was going to be way shorter than you had said. Can you explain why there's a difference? It's better to do that than to have something wrong or to have something contradictory. Also, your sources should never be surprised by the way a story turned out. You should always be warning them if there's something that's going to be either unfavorable toward them or something that you think might catch them off guard or not make them so happy. You need to give them an opportunity to respond or to comment on it, or at least just give them the heads up. It's way worse to have something out that they don't feel like they were prepped for. Even if it's like something you know they're going to hate, they'll appreciate that you gave them the chance. That being said, never send a source a full story. They will ask you, like you'll get asked this so many times. You do not need to do that. You shouldn't do that. You can send them quotes as they'll run so they can check them and make sure that you got them accurately, or you can send back facts to fact check them, or certain parts of the story to make sure it's all correct, but we're never sending sources a full story so that they can correct it or so that they can make sure they like how it got portrayed. That is like, they have no right to that. And then once a story is out, be proud of it. Send your links around. Don't be shy to reach back out to your sources and say, hey, it's up. Like, I'd love for you to read it. Give me your feedback. If there's corrections or literal issues, which will happen in your lifetime, make them promptly, work with your advisor. But again, you don't have to take their feedback. You don't have to care about their feedback, but send it around and show them that you're following through and that their time was meaningful to you. Here is an example just to kind of help make sense of some of this stuff. So say, for example, you're covering a construction project at the school's library, and some students have started to protest and say that the budget is way too big and it's being misused and that the project is over schedule and that it's super, super loud and it's hard to focus in class. So first, your first interviews should be a project manager, either at the school, some kind of like public works director at the school, or someone at the construction company that's going to be able to outline to you like a general overview logistically of the construction. Like, when did it start? What is the budget? How long is it expected to go? Like, how many workers will be on it? What can students expect to see? Why is this construction happening? all those sorts of things. Those should be your first questions. Since budgeting is a specific issue, see if you can talk specifically to a budget manager, to a financial manager, and go into the details of the finances so you understand them once you get to, say, people who are unhappy with the budget. Then you want to move on to people who are going to give you different perspectives. So interview teachers, interview students. They might not know the logistics the way you do at that point, but they'll understand what students are saying, what people's issues with them are, how it might affect people. Talk to protest organizers, talk to people who live nearby. If you know people are saying it's affecting students, you need to go talk to those students and see how it's affecting them. Don't be afraid of a field interview. If you're walking by the construction, stop a worker, ask them, what's it like being on the job? Ask if you can talk to their manager, ask if they can point you in the right direction. Talk to students walking by. If you see a student covering their ears as they walk by, that's a great little anecdote. Go ask them for their name, ask them if this construction's been bothering them, where they live, whatever. And if you see people upset, go talk to people who are protesting. Say, why'd you come out here? You know, why are you passionate about this? Like, what brought you? This, if you're going to take anything away from this, it's this question. This is the famous interview question. Everyone I've ever asked for interview advice has given me this piece of advice. At the end of an interview, you should say, is there anything else I should know? Is there anything else we didn't touch on? Is there anything you wish I had asked about? Leave it super open-ended at the end. And that is honestly where I've gotten the most information, the best quotes, just giving people kind of a free platform at the end after you've already kind of gotten through all the things you think you need to know. Say, have I missed something completely? What do I need to know about this? That's such a rich question. So some tips and tricks. Again, there's no stupid questions. So even if they might have said it, even if you could have looked it up, ask it. It's better to know and be embarrassed for 5 seconds than to have a gap in your story. Silence is totally okay. It can feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's good to let your sources breathe and think and process what you're bringing to the table. And if you cut them off, you're going to miss a lot of the thought process for them. If they don't answer a question the way that you wanted them to, ask again. Don't be afraid to prompt them, to steer. You are, at the end of the day, directing this conversation, and they know that. So if you think they missed the point of a question, ask it again. Say, I actually don't think you understood that question. Can we go over it one more time? Don't worry about all that stuff. These are just some good questions I think work for almost any interview. Stuff like, how has this affected you? What was your reaction to this? Can you walk me through such and such? Can you give me an example? That's a great way to get kind of anecdotes and color. If they say, like, that was a really good year for us, say, can you give me some examples of why? Can you explain to me how? If they say, you know, I had a lot of bad days that month, can you give me an example of a bad day? Those are great, like, prompting, open-ended questions. And that's all. So I don't know if anyone joined us for questions, but I can do so.